Você está ouvindo o podcast Estudar Direito pelo Mundo. Neste podcast você aprenderá com o Klaus como você pode alcançar o sonho de realizar seu mestrado em Direito fora do Brasil. Envie suas perguntas e depoimentos no Instagram @klauslau.
Hello guys, hello everyone. Super cool to be here today with Matyáš, who will be talking about some of his experience being a law student in the US and also having had the chance to take several different internships while studying in America. So welcome, Matyáš. Thanks a lot for accepting the invitation to be part of my podcast today. If I may ask, would you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are?
Sure. So hello, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to this podcast. I'm Matyáš Kohout, originally from the Czech Republic, and I'm also an EU citizen. However, I went to the US, first of all, for undergrad, studying financial economics, and subsequently I went back to Europe, working for a little bit in finance and accounting, and then I continued my studies in the US, where I'm currently doing my JD, the 3-year Juris Doctor program at the George Washington University Law School in DC.
Alrighty, thanks a lot for that, Matyáš. I was wondering, first of all, did you wanted to go to law school since you were a child? Kind of like, how did law school showed up in your life?
It's a good question. I don't have a clear answer. I think continuously I got to that state of mind, and probably early in my bachelor's, when I was in the US, I kind of started thinking of having the combination of economics degree and then going to law school, which is not traditional really outside of the US. So I think that's the major reason why I'm doing it.
Great, that's awesome. And was there any particular reason for choosing the US to pursue your studies?
Right. So one is that it's exceptional that not too many countries allow you to do the JD after you have bachelor's from something else than law. So that's one reason. And second is absolutely the quality of the education. Even though it's just 3 years law school, you can feel how quickly you're learning. And then if you have internships, you can just see that you are doing work that you were not able to do just a few weeks ago. So it's a pretty useful degree.
That's great to hear, definitely. Well, several of the people whom I know are going to the US for LLM programs. It's kind of usual for, I guess, Brazilian attorneys and stuff. So do you get to meet some LLM students in your classes? Are there some LLMs along with you?
Sure. We have classes together. Not the first year during JD because that's just the US law, but the second and third years, I choose all my classes. So most of these are with LLM students. And some of them, the LLMs have majority. So it's pretty cool to even have this combination of, different degree students in one class.
Yeah, I bet. I think that must make it even nicer, definitely. Well, so about internships, the main topic of today's discussion. So could you mention, some of the organizations you have had the chance to intern for so far?
Sure. So before law school, I worked at the PricewaterhouseCoopers, one of the big four accounting firms, and a couple of other internships. But while I'm in law school, it's 4 internships. One was FINRA, which is a US regulator of, the New York Stock Exchange and financial markets more broadly. Second, UNICEF in New York, where I was in investigations, within UNICEF, procurement cases, corruption, harassment. Now I'm finishing my internship in UNESCO, which is another UN agency based in Paris. And here I work with the Czech mission to UNESCO. So I joined, meetings, negotiations, drafting procedures, and things like that. And I think next week I should start internship in Brussels, working for a member of the European Parliament in Brussels.
Incredible. That's awesome. That's really great. Really amazing about it. I was wondering, so are your classes all online because of COVID? And then you did your internship mostly remote, or did you then mostly in person? How did that turn out for you in these last few years?
Right. So yes, my classes went online from the whole second year, the fall and now the spring. And so I try to take advantage of that by, getting these internships. And that's why I'm now interning in Paris and, during the day working and then at night taking classes. So it wasn't too much fun, but it was the, one time, let's say, that I could do it. So that was, I guess, the advantage of being remote.
Yes, there's definitely a bright side to it. That's great. That's great that you're taking a good advantage of it. And, you mentioned several different organizations, and I was wondering, do you feel like those internships are mostly available for JDs? Do you think that some LLM students could, be in some of those internships as well? And then after that, I'd like to, just know a little bit of how you got into the path of, big firms and, big organizations, internships. If you feel like there is a strategic approach people should take if they are trying to find those internships and, not only just applying for the sake of applying to them, but actually, having a meaningful engagement since the application process.
Sure. To your first question, whether it's, for LLMs worth it to do some of these internships, I definitely think it is. But on the other side, the LLM program is usually just 1 year, right? So I think you should try to take advantage of what the school itself has to offer, of some of the classes, maybe the clinics, and, get exposed to this education. But again, if you have a chance maybe for 1 semester to do some internship, I think it's definitely great and complements your education. And, second, I believe everything or a lot of these things are about persistence. So, I've been applying like crazy, basically so much. And then for the European Parliament, just getting the email addresses of different members of the Parliament and emailing them one by one. And, with the number of applications, it's likely that something could work out for you. But besides, definitely, of course, networking helps. And so if your school would have some organizations where you can meet like-minded students and they may have some information that position opens up or, someone informs you, then I always had more success by going through some of these pathways, kind of just going online otherwise.
Yeah, most definitely. That does make sense. And I like what you said, try to apply to as many as possible. I love that, applying like crazy, if you want to, get to your goals. So that, I guess that's what you got to do, right?
I think you have to. Yeah. I mean, it's not nice to do it, but like it always increases your chances. So you should do it if you can.
Yeah, definitely. And was it Washington, D.C. and the university you're doing your JD at? Were they like your main goal? Did you have like a list of like top priority options for law schools? And, how did that turn out for you?
Yeah, I was aiming for good international law programs, and George Washington is one of the schools for that. So I'm, extremely grateful that I can do the program. And of course, I applied for some of the huge names, like NYU, Penn, and Harvard. And basically, I got either rejected or I went to like interviews and then, waiting lists. And the process was like going on for months. And then, however, I agreed to George Washington, pay my deposit and, continue there. So it's a long process, especially for JD. If you want to go, it's a bit short of the LLM, and it should be a bit easier for the LLM too.
Got it. Since you did your bachelor's in the US, if I'm right, did you have to take the LSAT in the US, or did you kind of have to go back to your country? You could do it there. How did transition happen?
Right. So yeah, I had to take the LSAT, and there are testing centers all around the world. So I took it twice, once in the US and then one in the Czech Republic. So, what are the options? It just, of course, it's fewer time slots outside of the US. Then you also have to register ahead and plan it. But yeah, I went through this process of the LSAT thing.
That's just incredible, just to hear all of that story and, kind of how things played out well for you. I'm super happy to hear, success stories of people who made it in an international scenario. So that's very incredible. And, just some additional ideas for people who are thinking, about different programs and how to apply and, just things that people would do while in law school, whether in a JD or LLM. Would you consider being from an international background an advantage in the programs and possibilities you are seeing right now. Could you speak a little bit on that?
Sure. So for the application, I think it depends on the program. LLM programs are mostly foreign trained lawyers. So I think you have a greater chance as a foreigner to do the LLM. For JD, I think that the acceptance rate of foreigners is actually below that of Americans, so that will be higher. That's already, accounting for like English not being a first language and stuff like that. So that's harder. For internships, it very much depends. If you aim for some organization like the World Bank or something of this sort, it seems to me that, I don't have like data, but it seems to me, and that's what I've been hearing, that being a foreigner is an advantage. You will know some languages, they look for people with foreign experience, and oftentimes there are quotas, the nationalities as well, and that's usually in your favor. For jobs in the US, it's honestly difficult if you're not a citizen because they have to, sponsor a visa, and it's pretty expensive for the firms to sponsor the visa. So it's a long process, and it's harder to get a job in the US actually if you're not going for a big organization.
Thanks for answering that. It's important to hear those things, and I'm glad you said that. Also, out of curiosity, are you the first in your family to go to law school, or do you have somebody else who's gone before you?
Well, I'm actually first generation, so my parents didn't go to college either, but that's more for the political situation in my country, where parents grew up, but no one is a lawyer.
Nice. I can sympathize to that. I'm a first generation college.
Thumbs up, dude.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's super good. Well, Matyáš, just to wrap up our episode for today, would you have any words of encouragement or any, just piece of advice or quote you like to share with the people who will be listening to this podcast later on?
Wow. Well, I'm in my 20s, so I don't like to give last words advice because I don't think I'm really entitled to that. But one quote, since you mentioned that, one quote I like is from Socrates, and it's from the Apology. It's basically that the only type of wiseness is knowing that you don't know anything. And so this may give you, or it gives me some, calmness to know when to see that wherever I go, many people have impressive backgrounds, but they still struggle with many things. So if you feel like there's so much you have to do and you don't have much information, everyone is lost in many of these things. So don't be too stressed about it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much about that. And thanks once again for joining us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure to speak with you.